I was inspired to talk a bit about what we do when we feel guilty. Was inspired by Shoen's talk last week, which I watched and recorded earlier today. And I think my observations also apply to how we handle difficult states like transition and turmoil. So perhaps might be addressive to some of what you reported in terms of your lives right now. So I'll just move into it. We have these states that are very difficult to feel. Right? I think the main ones that I've identified in my practice are fear, anger, guilt, and shame. Yeah, I used to add loneliness to that collection, but I realized loneliness, really what I meant by loneliness was just a form of fear of being alone. So I kind of consider that to be a version of fear. And fear is mostly forward-looking. Guilt is mostly backwards-looking, right, to the past. And then anger and shame sort of have to do, well, shame has to do with the present, and anger can be all over the map. I think that's the way I look at it, right? And I'll make a clear distinction between guilt and shame. Guilt I see as a feeling you have about something that you or someone has done, and shame has to do with who you are, right? So a quality that you possess or believe that you possess. So always the problems arise not with our core feelings, but with what we do with our core feelings, how we handle them. And typically, looking across this landscape, feelings of fear, the feelings of guilt, right? The feeling of feeling so rejected by something you've done, feeling so isolated by what you've done, are so difficult to feel. Feeling of shame, the feeling that something's wrong with you or not okay with you, fundamentally. So you're not part of belonging, to this family of humanity. I'll leave anger, to the side, I think, at this point. They're so hard to feel. They're so difficult. They're so strong, they can be, that we, instantly form defense mechanisms around them. Right? We push them away, we avoid them, we in fact preemptively avoid them. Right? We do things in order not to feel the fear that we think we're going to feel if we do something. So unpleasant and troublesome do we believe that they will be within our bodies. These are feelings, right? So, ideas are ideas, but, they've done studies. This really resonated with me. I've said it before. I read it many years ago. The feeling of being rejected feels in the body as bad as being punched in the stomach. This was some study that they did. I think they did brain mapping around it. And they saw that the brain is registering rejection as a physical pain. Yeah. So this is what the body is doing. It doesn't want to feel that pain. And so these psychophysical formations are being developed in order to cope with them, manage them, avoid them, protect against them. Right? That's what's happening. So when we look at something like guilt, I liked the distinction between remorse and guilt that that Sean brought up last week. Remorse is a feeling of sorrow around having done something that caused pain. Perfectly appropriate to the situation. Right? Just as an aside, remorse it runs through our culture, as an object of study, as does guilt especially for those of us brought up in certain traditions. I was raised Catholic, so some heavy guilting there. Those of us who were raised Jewish, some heavy guilting there, I know. And our Western culture, I think, is just pretty good on guilt, amplifying. What about all these like Law and Order like TV shows, right? Guilt and innocence, right? All these legal dramas, right? And that's what it is. It's a drama, right? We create actually drama. We create characters out of the feelings. That's what gets manufactured. So, if that's true, and I think that's a very acute observation, we act out of a sense of internalized guilt, right? We don't want to feel bad about ourselves, so we overcompensate by being good and nice and pleasant towards the person that we might feel some guilt towards. Right? But it's all based on a character that we've subconsciously created for ourselves. And this is what the ego does. It latches onto these strong feelings, and it creates characters as a strategy for avoiding the difficult feelings. How many people have seen the Kurosawa movie Rashomon? Nobody? Do we want to? We have people who want to. Anybody online? Okay, Sokyo and Padma. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to summarize it really briefly, but it's amazing in its psychological acuity around guilt, actually. So what happens in the movie is that there's a samurai and his wife who are traveling through the woods. They're attacked by a bandit, and the bandit attacks the woman and then kills her husband. So that's all in the backstory of the movie. And then the present tense of the movie takes place in a courtroom where the bandit and then the woman present their testimony of what happened. And then the samurai who was killed also testifies through the character of a medium who channels him from beyond death. Okay. And they give their testimony around what happened. Now, it's nominally this is a court case around the guilt of the bandit who kind of obviously we know killed the samurai. But what's going on with each of these accounts? And we go through and we get in flashback, we get each of the accounts of what happened, and they're all completely different. In each one, the bandit does kill the samurai, but actually, I take that back. The bandit doesn't kill the samurai in all of them. But in each of the people's accounts, they are the hero of the story and the victim of the story and the perpetrator of the crime. It's pretty amazing. So even I'll just take the woman, okay? She, in her account, she's victimized, by the bandit. Because she actually kills her husband because she's been dishonored by his failure to defeat the bandit. Okay, and then she's also the hero because she reclaims her own honor by doing that. Okay, it's quite sophisticated, and I'm not going to do it entire justice. But I invite you to look at what you do with your own stories about yourself. How, even though this is kind of logical nonsense, right? But how often are you the victim, the perpetrator, and the hero of your own story? Right? I've moved through these all the time, with quite compelling narratives that I have. All of that's a way to just, deal with the difficult feeling. If we can look at our past and be just truly remorseful about what we've done and feel bad, really feel bad about what we've done. That's atonement. That is the atonement that we're invited to engage in. It is quite an opportunity, times of, let's say, turmoil or transition, right? So, what's the problem, really, right? What's the problem? Where does the difficulty come in? Well, we feel out of control, right? And we may have some fear about what's coming next. Right? It's pretty simple, right? And those feelings are uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable to be out of control. It feels uncomfortable to not know what's coming next. Okay. If we can really just be with that discomfort, then we find that the character making that happens doesn't really happen as strongly. We tend to land in our day, in our body, in our moment. We really realize, oh, well, actually, I don't know what's going to happen. That's the truth. Nobody knows what's going to happen. The story is generated by the avoidance of the feeling. That's what our egoic consciousness does. It creates the story from the resistance to being with your own feelings. And when you allow yourself to feel, work with that resistance, the story making just becomes so ephemeral, starts to weaken. It becomes less compelling. You start to have a humorous kind of look on it as you notice yourself telling these stories. And it's like, really? Is that true? I've noticed at night, when I wake up at night, is when some of these catastrophizing stories really get really loud for me. This is going to happen and that's going to happen, and, all of these things. And I notice the tendency of my mind to really want to work with them directly, right? I want to tell a counter story, or I want to analyze that story or investigate that story, right? Really go into it in that way. And then, if I'm particularly awake in my higher consciousness, I realize all I need to do is just feel my damn feelings. Just feel the fear, feel the discomfort. and then everything starts to shift. So there's a way in which this egoic consciousness is served by this character making that we do, okay? And it perpetuates itself, okay? So we generate that story, we're multiple characters in the story, and then we play out the story along the different timelines into the past and the future, right? It happened this way or that way. It's gonna happen this way or that way. We're very creative. Right? We have great imaginations. And so we can spin a lot of different versions of all of this. It can be very compelling. Right? But all of that is serving a certain type of egoic consciousness, which is feeding off of the fixity of yourself. Oh, this is what I am. This is what this means. This is how I feel. It's true that it's true for me, it's true for many who have reported this, it may be true for you too. The familiarity of an uncomfortable feeling is better than the unfamiliarity of an open unknown. Openness feels scary. The unknown feels scary. But the security of the familiarity, of the distress condition, even though it feels terrible, I want to land there. I want to be there. I want to sit there. I'm going to hold on to that feeling in my body. This is what we do. I do it too. I don't mean to shame anyone, for doing this. I do it too, and we all do it. But it's very helpful to see that we do it and see that that's serving something. I've heard it called the pain body. The pain body. Eckhart Tolle calls this the pain body. My teacher Shinko Roshi has used that term in a lot of her teachings. The pain body perpetuates itself by articulating and speaking at a certain vibration. And then that vibration tends to resonate with the same vibration, even stimulate that same vibration in other bodies, right? And then everybody is vibrating to that same frequency, say of fear or pain. Okay, it's happening in the culture, right? In the media. It stimulates certain vibrations, and then we all resonate to that vibration. So there's just a mechanism that's going on there. I don't want to, demonize egoic consciousness, pathologize egoic consciousness, although it does have its pathological tendencies, right? To create these characters. Okay. So always it's to go into the feeling. Always. Always, always, always. Allow yourself to feel viscerally and somatically fear, that feeling of fear. What that rejection and isolation of guilt feels like, that terrible feeling feels like. The shame. Just feel the shame. And anger, of course, it's great. Yeah, feel the feeling of anger, the energy of anger as it moves through you. Incredible source of energy. You can transform that into this laser-like diamond wisdom. Anger can be like that. The energy of fear is the energy of excitement. The energy of anger is the energy of insight. maybe the energy of guilt transforms into the energy of innocence. If you really feel the feeling of guilt without saying, I am guilty, you actually connect at this very, very pure, innocent being that's underneath that and is actually feeling that. So that's our practice, to be fully present with all of this. And all of the tough stuff, those are the doorways. Those are the portals. Boy, all of this is the good stuff to embrace. It's one of the great blessings of our practice here, is that we know that that's the game of this life. It's not to be comfortable and to succeed and to achieve according to the criteria of society. No, it's to meet all of the so-called hard stuff, the obstacles, the tough stuff and the tough feelings, because those are the opportunities for the biggest awakenings, the biggest liberation. Because those are the things that we typically close down most strongly around. We go right in there. And that's where the treasure is. Your boundless nature. Unfixed, fluid, ever-changing. Tapped in to the source. Always, not separate. You can even cultivate this kind of curiosity around it in your life. Okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? I know nobody here, including me, isn't like, okay, it's boring, it's too easy, give me something rough. I'm not like that, I'm not saying that. But you can go, all right, come on, you're gonna throw me a curveball? Give me a curveball. I welcome it. Yeah. All right, well, thank you for your attention.